Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us on today's Snack Chat and Keep on Track. My name is Catherine Connors. I'm one of the team leads and openness specialists here with Adopt for Life. I'm here with the other team lead, Shannon. She is also the co-host for the Snack and Chat. And although you cannot see her, we have a special guest with us today, Mary Jo Lan, and we are talking about her new book that just came out. Hopefully it's not mirrored. It's called Caring Together. It's a guide for parents, foster parents, and adoptive parents of children who are in care. So thank you so much, Mary Jo, for joining us.
Oh, I'm so glad to be here, and I'm so sorry that I wasn't able to be on video. I just couldn't get a good enough internet signal where I'm at right now to do that. So sorry, it'll just be voice only.
It's okay. We're very casual here, so it's no problem at all. So I always go through our little housekeeping rules before we get going. So these sessions are during our lunch hour, so it is from 12:15 until just about 1 o'clock, and this is just a time for us to interact. We've asked questions previously to Mary Jo, so we're going to be asking about her book and then asking the questions that some of you have sent in to us. If you are seeing us live, hello, thanks so much for joining us during your lunch. Shannon is graciously going to be monitoring our live feed. So if you have questions, comments, want to share, this is our time to kind of check in with one another and learn together as we snack and drink our tea. As always, we do want to ask you all to just be mindful about the information that you are sharing. The Snack and Chats are publicly live on our Facebook page, which means that they are accessible to anyone. So we ask you to please refrain from using first or last names or details which may compromise safety or provide any information that you don't want everybody to know. Yes, and just to let you know as well, Mary Jo is here. You guys can't see her, but you get to see these two lovely faces of Shannon and I, but she is available. She is listening right now and hearing me ramble on. So we're going to go ahead and start because I know that there were a lot of questions, but before I dive into the questions, I do want to formally introduce Mary Jo. So a lot of you guys in the adoption, kin, and customary care world have heard of Mary Jo. Definitely here at Adopt for Life, and I know with the ACO she has long-standing relationships and supports and a lot of collaborations with us. So Mary Jo Lan is a registered psychotherapist, and she specializes in supporting and enhancing attachments with children and families, bonding, resolutions of early loss and trauma and neglect in children. For those of you who may not or haven't checked out her website yet, maybe we can post it below in the live feed afterwards. But Mary Jo also has an amazing series called When We're Very Young. Personally, I love that series, the web series. They're little short clips, and they just provide some great strategies and tidbits and stuff for us to think about. I think my favorite is the grandmother story, but I won't share too much more. Honestly, please listen to it if you can. So that's my formal introduction of you, Mary Jo. So welcome. Thank you so much for coming.
It's great to be here.
I really appreciate it. So let's get into some of the questions about specifically your book. I know that some of the Adopt for Life community parents actually have recently purchased this book. There was a couple of people who after they knew you were coming on, they bought it. So I know that there's a lot of interest. So the first question is, what was your motivation really to write this book?
Well, one of the motivations was that, I see in many of the children that I work with, I see a lot of grief and longing from the loss of their first families. And then, of course, we have the change in the laws and policies, in that openness is going to become, much more prevalent in the plans for adoptions for many children in Ontario. and around the world, really, openness is becoming much more accepted and accepting. And I think that people have expectations now around openness, and yet not a lot of experience or confidence or feelings of, well, frankly, lots of people feel scared about it. So I felt, and the other part of it was that I see these huge ranges in openness possibilities from, basically families of origin being like extended family members, aunt and uncle and cousins, to children who are in adoptive homes. And I also see where the situation can never, ever get to be like that it's dangerous, and that safety and it has to be always considered. And yet, for those children where there is and cannot be any openness, how do we navigate that, and how do we manage the grief and the loss? And then what do we do when they become adults, and then there is going to be some connection, possibly sought after. So, and I always also felt that in the way that I wrote the book, originally it was going to be two different books. Going to be one book for families of origin and another book for foster and adoptive parents, or the parents that come after a child's been placed in care. And then I realized that really that the key to any successful relationship between family of origin and other carers is really the basis of that relationship is going to be empathy. And I felt that it was probably really, really important for foster and adoptive parents and customary care parents to have a greater sense of the experience of having of the families of origin and having their children in care, and what that must be like or could be like. And if you lose custody of your children, and to have them go forward and go into other permanency placements, what that loss would be like, and how to navigate that. So empathy is really the key component for openness to be successful. Literature bears that up. And so I felt by putting everything into one book, each sort of parent or each kind of parent, whether it's family of origin or kin or foster or adoptive, could read about what the other parents are experiencing and how they're trying to navigate their role. And the other part of it was, and this is just the final bit, is that I felt like I just think back through my life and moving from house to house, and I always moved with family, my family, either my family of origin or my own family with my husband and my children, and I can always share stories of that home and that experience and that place with the people that I still live with. And I see so many children who move from home to home to home, and there is no one in their life that can share their experience of what happened in that home. And I felt like children live in a silo. And I thought that this book, if we can maintain connections, reduce losses, and maintain connections for children, then their life won't be disconnected and disjointed and kind of siloed into different places and families and people.
Yeah, this is, I can just hear you talk forever. I think this is such a needed book. There's such a gap, and I think you hit the nail on the head talking as an adoptive parent and as the openness specialist. There's just so much fear. And people, I literally have heard people say, well, there's no guide for this, or I don't know what to do, or, you know what I mean? And actually, literally, there is now a guide for this. And I personally really liked how straightforward it was. It talks about the hard things that people don't want to talk about. They're too scared to ask. And I think that, which makes a book like this so much more needed in the community. So I mean, I personally, I like, and even with, and just wanted to say as well, like, yes, we're talking about this as part of Adopt for Life, but even myself, I learned a lot. And so I think that I'm actually answering one of the questions I'm going to ask you, but I think that this book is great for someone throughout their entire journey. So it doesn't just need to be when you're first starting or when there's an openness relationship just developing, because I think there's tidbits that you can pull throughout it, which is amazing as well.
Well, thank you. I do hope it's valuable at all times of a child's journey. But I think it would be most helpful to a child if this book comes in very early in their journey, so that their family of origin, even when they're interacting with an agency, a child welfare agency, and that they may be having to place their child in care, that transition can go more smoothly, and that so often it's so difficult. I can't imagine anything more difficult than to have your child not be able to live with you, and the struggle that goes on, that you're having to meet in the same building with your child, and perhaps also meet with people who are recommending that your child not come home to you. That journey is just so unbelievably and unbearably painful, that I think it's really important for those parents who are, thereafter interacting with those parents, the family of origin parents who've gone through such a hard journey, to really understand how difficult that was and how difficult it is, and to have a lot of empathy for the courage and the strength that it takes to engage in an openness relationship if you are, a member of that family of origin.
Yeah, and I think too, even just looking back on my own personal journey, I was just so excited to be a parent that I wasn't even thinking. And looking back at that now, it breaks my heart to think that it was almost my own ignorance that just completely, I wasn't there. And it's very easy to vilify families of origin, especially depending on what the reason. It's very easy to put them in this category, but at the end of the day, we don't know the true reason. And if we jump off the gun with this relationship that you're vilifying these people, how are you supposed to develop an authentic relationship or support your kid in developing that relationship? So absolutely agree with that.
And the other thing is that there's, I do believe Michael Blugerman once said to me, there's no such thing as a closed adoption anymore, because of the internet, because of cell phones, because the world is an open door in your child's hand if they can access the internet. And one of the most difficult things is if there is no openness, and then children are secretly trying to find their family of origin, they're going on a very, very difficult journey alone. And I think this book helps everyone to see that there's no stepping back from this. We have to be able to do openness well, and do it with empathy and compassion, and understand the benefits, and also be aware of who's in charge and who's responsible for keeping everyone safe, and doing the best we can. I mean, that's all we can ever ask of anybody, is just do the best we can, right?
Absolutely. So very basically, how can people purchase this book? What's the best way for people to actually go? And if they are interested, if they're hearing this, they're learning about this now, and they want to actually go and buy it, how can they do that?
Yeah, Amazon. it's on Amazon. That's just the best way to get it, for sure. Yep. So just Caring Together and my name, and it will pop up, and it will magically appear in your door. The first person who bought it actually had it in 24 hours. I was quite shocked.
Very nice. I mean,
but anyway, yeah.
I know there's a couple of families that I was speaking to who said they purchased it. So we'll see what their what is it, the Prime membership? You can get everything almost same day. So
yeah, it came very, very quickly. Yeah.
Amazing. And do you have, and I think I'm jumping the gun, but I'm going to ask it, do you have any plans for any future books, or are there anything along, whether it's similar to this or anything else that you're working on?
Well, what I have planned with this book is some workshops. So I haven't particularly advertised. I mean, the book was finished and placed on Amazon just before Christmas.
Right.
So like just 1 month before Christmas. So I have sent a copy to all of the Children's Aid Societies in Ontario, And I've also included in with the book the workshops that I think would be valuable. I've designed like 9 workshops to go with the book, 3 for each of the different sorts of parents, the family of origin and foster parents, and then permanency parents. And I think that there's going to be a need for everyone in the adoption constellation, including workers, to be able to support openness in a much kinder, gentler, and empathic way that supports children's need for identity and knowing who they are and what their own story is. And I mean, really, this is about kids. It's about the kids. It's not, always this is always about the children and the youth and the young adults. But they need to not have the pain of grief, and they need to know who they are and know why they are and how they came to be where they are. And of course, the younger the child, the more it is up to the adults to be able to provide that to the children.
Very well said. Absolutely. So we do have a couple of questions from families. We have about half hour left. Shannon? I always get the timing wrong. She says yes. Okay, we have about half an hour left. So I do want to get to some of the questions that we have. Obviously, we understand that these are only going to be general answers. And we're going to do our best to get to them all. So if you have asked the question to us and we aren't able to get it, please know that we're still here able to support. So I will provide some answers to you myself. And obviously, you can find a lot of the answers in here in Mary Jo's book as well. So, and if you're watching live as well, please feel free to shoot off any questions if you have any for Mary Jo or for us. So the first question is, I just purchased your book and we're supporting our foster child through a goodbye visit. Are there any tips that I can share with the child?
Well, yes. I mean, obviously it depends on how old the child is. But I think, lots and lots of preparation. I think that we sometimes, in our best efforts to prevent children from getting hurt, we don't spend enough time helping them to develop the capacity to deal with their own suffering or uncertainty. And what things will be like. I mean, I think that one of the most important moments in a child's life, and obviously for the parent, is if there is going to be a visit during which children and parents will be saying goodbye to each other. Every effort has to be made to support both the family and the child in being able to do this in a way that's really, really helpful to the child. And I think it takes a tremendous amount of work and support beforehand. So it's not just tips. It means some amount of dedicated time and support for the child, understanding exactly what's going to happen, and the possibilities that what you're planning won't happen, because I think sometimes the visits just don't go well, and then why that might not go well. And for any child who's, say 6 and up, there's going to be an awful lot of work done. And for children who are less than 6, say 3 to 3, 4, 5, I think the best way to do that is to have a little storybook that you create. It doesn't have to be something fancy. It can be just some words and some stick figures. That's something that you can repeatedly kind of tell a story about. This is what's going to happen, and this is why it's going to happen, and who's going to be there, and what the room will be like, and how long it will be, and then what will happen afterwards. So important to say, and this is what's going to happen afterwards. You're going to come back here to our house. And then very shortly after that, children do need to be aware of what is the plan. I think quite often we're very sensitive about not causing children to be distressed. But I think, I've seen I've seen lots of difficult transitions because children think that once they've said goodbye to their parents that they're going to stay in their foster home. So I think when children are placed in foster homes, they need to be told one of two things will be happening. One, you'll go back to your family, or two, you will stay in this family until they find a family forever for you. And we don't do that. We just sort of leave them wondering what's going to happen. And I think that they need to know very, very soon that the plan is for you to go home, or the plan, we don't know what the plan is. You will either go home or you will go and stay here until you go to another family forever.
Yeah.
And children living in limbo find it very difficult to not know about the future, so they stop thinking about it. Yeah. And that's not really healthy for them.
No, and that in itself is its own trauma. I find if it's not handled properly, there is the trauma of the loss and the grief and moving, but those, quote unquote goodbye visits or whatever they want to call them, that in itself can be significantly traumatic. It needs to be handled with grace, I think.
Yes, and of course that really depends on the support and the capacity of the family of origin. And, obviously some families will need a lot of support. And it might be that they can't do it in a face-to-face way. And maybe that gets to be done by video, where you can stop and redo it and stop and redo it. And then create a goodbye message that's done really well. And the other piece is if they can't even do that, then maybe it's just a really good goodbye letter. And I do have an example of a goodbye letter in the book, which I know some people are finding helpful already. And also, is it really goodbye, or is it just that you're not going to come home and live with us anymore, but you will be, we will be able to write letters, we will be able to see each other once a year. So, I'm not sure about necessarily what goodbye means. It might just mean you're not coming home, that you will live with another family and grow up with another family, but we still will have contact until you're an adult.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, another question. So I'm an awaiting parent, and I've heard so many horror stories about relationships with first families that I'm getting scared to adopt. Do you have any suggestions?
Well, I wouldn't be scared to adopt, and I think that being scared about openness is one of the reasons why I wrote this book. I mean, I think if you read the book, you will develop more empathy for the difficult circumstances that families of origin find themselves in, that results in their children being taken into care. And frankly, I don't know, maybe it's because I'm a grandmother now, but frankly, I see most of these parents who are young, the same age as my children, mostly I see them as probably kids who were in care, or perhaps they're adults who as children should have been in care. And so I can see why they really struggled to give their own children what perhaps they didn't get when they were children, and then perhaps another generation and another generation. So I start to really see it as an intergenerational or transgenerational series of traumas and hurts and suffering that we're trying to help. And perhaps the best way to help is to have as much empathy for the children as we do for their parents.
Absolutely.
Or perhaps I should have said that the other way around, as much empathy for the parents as we do for the children. That's a more accurate way to say it.
No, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. I'm going out of order in my questions here, but I want to make sure we have time for as much as we can. So this is one that we hear a lot on our closed forums. And I know that we have talked a lot about this through our openness support groups, but would love to hear your input on it as well. So the question is, I'm so worried that allowing an open adoption years later will result in my daughter or child wanting to live with them. So wanting to live with their family of origin. How often does this happen, and how can I manage my fears?
Well, I think the first thing to think about is whether or not there's openness. Children who aren't with families, their families of origin, wish and want for that anyway. that openness really has nothing to do with that. There's always, well, almost always. For sure, I've met persons who were adopted as infants who don't seem to have a sense of wanting to, or needing to know about their family of origin. But lots and lots of people do. That it's always a question. It's always like feels like a hole in their heart. And so whether or not there's openness, I think that's going to be there. And if there is no openness, then what I worry about is the resentment that builds up, the not talking about it, perhaps the secret searching, and all of these things, to my mind, become much more dangerous and unsafe. And that the best thing that we can do is support our children in their grief and in their loss and in their longing. And if we can, provide them with the answers and support whatever relationship is safe and healthy and beneficial to the child. Openness is always about what is best for the child and what meets the child's needs. And we just keep our direction, our focus on that. And yes, we can be scared that they might go and live with them, but it would certainly be much more safe and much less worrying if you know who the parents are, if you have a relationship with them, if you can talk to them and phone them up and say, I just walked into my son's bedroom and he hasn't slept in his bed tonight. Did he come to you? Versus, oh my gosh, I've just opened my son's bedroom door and he's not in it. And I don't know where he is or where he's gone. And so I think that by having a relationship with family of origin, you do create a safety net for a child who may want to explore what it would be like. And I think if children have had a relationship all along, that there wasn't a severing of a relationship, it's much more likely that, yeah, I know who they are and I know where they are and I know this life is really good for me and they're there. And I don't have this longing and this pulling because I get to see them and I know who I am. So I'm living this life. And I think it's preventative for those fears and rather than making a greater risk.
Absolutely. I agree. And I find too, a lot of the fears that we can have as adoptive family, again, comes from the unknown and from us not having that relationship. And again, creating this narrative of who these people are. And so I've seen, and relationships need to build. So it's not maybe you have one conversation or you heard about a past situation, especially if children are apprehended. So you create this, who these people are in your mind. And so when the openness is on the verge of happening, I find that it's very easy to get scared and create these what if situations, which ultimately is detrimental to the child and to their identity and their relationships. And absolutely.
And it is perhaps better to focus on the common goal, which is the other parents love this child too. We all love this child. And we can all talk about this child and our love for this child and or youth or young adult, and how do we together, create the best possible world. And I've certainly talked with lots of first families, families of origin, where not knowing whether their child is loved and cared for is so horrible. Having the loss of that child is so horrible that in fact they don't go on to do well in their life. And yet, knowing the parents where their child lives, knowing how they love and they can see the love of their child, and they get to the point where they can say, our child, that's your child and that's my child and it's our child. And can we get there? And I think that's maybe some people call that too hopeful, but it can always be a goal.
Absolutely. Okay, we have time for probably one last question. And again, if you're seeing this live on replay, please feel free to keep asking because we will provide you with the answers. If not live, we will find a way to provide you with answers. So the last question, what one am I going to choose? Okay, so we really want a relationship with our kids' first family, but they are active users. So I'm assuming that means drug users. Is there any benefit of having openness with them, or do we need to, in quotes, cut them off until they are fully clean?
So, the thing about openness is that everyone needs to remember that it is a very wide range of forms of contact. So openness might include parents, but openness also could include grandparents, siblings. So when I say family of origin, I don't just mean the parents. And sometimes there's openness with many family members, but not parents. Now we know that information is going to go back and forth, but if parents are not able to manage a relationship in a safe way, there still may be openness with other family members. So that's just one part. The other part is that even with any member of the family of origin or in that constellation, there's this wide range of openness that ranges from contact once a year via a letter that is exchanged through a third party, such as the Children's Aid Society, so that non-identifying information is exchanged. That's still contact. That's still openness. So even if families are doing not very well, but are able at one point during the year, with some, perhaps even with some support, to write and or receive a letter, and always adoptive parents have the ability to say, this letter isn't appropriate for my child, so I'm not going to give it, but I'm going to hold it and give it to my child when my child's old enough to read this letter and to be able to understand, and I can support them. So that they can see that although you haven't seen your parents for 5 years, these 5 letters have come, your parents have been interested and wanting and available, they've just been having struggles. Now they've overcome some of those struggles, and now we can maybe exchange letters and photos twice a year, and that we will increase that. And then from there, you're starting to establish a relationship. And from that point, adoptive parents are always the gatekeepers of safety. And they have that ability to say, I don't feel okay about this. And to say, I'm going to keep this non-identifying, or I'm going to keep this at letters, no photos. But also to recognize that as the family of origin members likely grow older, perhaps get some more support, recognize that there is this possibility that they can have letters, or that can increase over time. One of the things that I recommend in the book is that if you don't have any contact with your child, then you just write emails to that you can save, and you have all these letters that you're writing to your child, that at some point when they become 17 or 18, that you can say, here are all the letters that I wrote you that I couldn't give to you, so that the child knows that they weren't forgotten. Because I think lots of little children say, to me as their therapist, do you think my mommy or my daddy thinks about me? Do you think they're alive? And those are the two questions that almost most seriously break my heart, that children think that if there's no evidence to say otherwise, how do they know that their first parents loved them? How do they know that they're still alive and okay? And so even those once a year letters say, I'm still here, I'm still alive, and I still love you. And I think that's really, really important for kids.
I agree. And I think along the line with letters as well, whether it's a formal arrangement or not, we get feedback from families saying, well, I'm writing letters, but I'm not getting any responses. And I think that personally, Mary Jo, feel free to share your opinions, and you as well, Shannon, but I personally feel that you should still keep writing those letters and those updates, because we have no idea what time and space these families are in. Maybe they're not able, maybe they don't have the funds to mail the letter, but I think that it's so important for us to still reach out, and it's important for our kids to see that we're still reaching out as well.
I think that's really true, because I think all of this is processing those feelings with the child. Every time you do that, you know, it's, yes, we're writing the letters back. Yes, we know they are getting them. And, you know, I often will tell children, you know, I do believe in your case that if something terrible had happened and that your parent had died, that you would be told. So my guess is your parent is still alive. And that you would also be told if the letters can't be delivered, like if they don't know where they are anymore. So my guess is they're getting the letters, and it might just be too hard to write back. And that's because they love you and they miss you, and it's very, very hard for them. But for them, it might be, you know, a really wonderful thing to hear that you're okay and that you're happy and that you're loved and you're enjoying school and your ballet and your hockey and things like that, right?
Yeah, absolutely. That's beautiful. Okay, I'm going to stop the questions there, just because the other ones are very involved questions, and I want to make sure that we're giving enough time to answer them. So I'm going to stop asking questions. However, I did receive the other questions. I will answer them, and hopefully I will reach out to Mary Jo for her input as well. But again, this is the book we are talking about, Caring Together. It's available on Amazon. Mary Jo also has a website for you guys to check out, so we'll make sure that we post it in the comments for those of you, because I did talk about her amazing web series that I highly suggest. Thank you guys so much for coming. Mary Jo, I know that it was hard for you to be available, so thank you so much for calling in and for making this work for us. I really appreciate your guidance and wisdom. I was messaging Shannon as you were talking, saying that I wish I had your brain, because I learn so much every time I hear you talk. So it's very appreciative for all of us. So the book is right here. Also, next week, January 28th, our Snack and Chat is going to be on post-adoption depression, which is another big topic for a lot of families. January 29th is Mental Health Awareness Day, so we wanted to talk about something mental health related and something that is hugely impacted in the adoption, kin, and customary care families. Shannon, is there any other anything else that I might be missing for next week?
I don't think so. I did want to pop in and just say that I was quiet because, Mary Jo, you can't see me, so I didn't want to dilute the whole conversation with Catherine, but I absolutely agree with her. I could listen to you forever, and I'm going to seek out some more ways to hear the things that you say. Our family is new to an openness journey, and some of just what you shared today has been amazing. So I still very much appreciate it.
Oh, thank you so much. And if anyone is reading the book and has any questions or comments, I believe my email is in the book. But if not, you can always contact me through my website. And I'm, you know, you write a book and you put it out there, and then it's almost like it's gone. and it's hard to know what people think or feel when they read it. Or so if anybody wants to send me their thoughts, I'd be happy to hear them.
Wonderful. Thank you guys so much. So we're going to sign off. We started a few minutes early, so we're going to end a few minutes early as well. Thank you so much for joining us on your lunch hour. Again, don't hesitate to reach out to us if you're watching this on replay, because we're here to support you, and we will see you all next week. Have a great week, guys.
Bye. Everyone.